I think people are frightened to show their work for the first time. Just see what people think and don't be upset if nobody likes your work because you might be in the wrong spot. Try another spot because work is accepted in different ways, even in different parts of a city.
Welcome to the Passionate Painter Podcast. I'm your host, Caroline Italia Carlson. Whether your art is a full-time career or your side gig, if you are passionate about creating art, this podcast is for you. Don't worry about taking notes. I'll do that for you. And you can find them at passionatepainterpodcast.com. Today, I'm bringing you an interview with modern iconographic painter Christina Miller. Christina's paintings offer a mystical and modern take on the ancient iconography of Catholicism. As the pressures on the environment and animal species have increased horribly over the past couple of decades, Christina's work evolved toward environmental themes. Her modern icons now celebrate the intersection of nature, animals, and sacred images, embodying that we live on this earth together and share in each other's beauty. An artist all her life, from poetry, coffeehouses, and theater to sculpture and paintings, Christina ultimately chose to focus on being an acrylic painter. She has lived and been an artist in Seattle, New Orleans, and mostly Santa Fe, her current home. Christina says, as a college art student at USC and the University of Washington, I was struck with the lack of symbolism in much of the art of the 20th century and now the 21st century. Symbolic art has always been my goal and agenda, creating symbols that reflect the connections between the natural and mystical worlds. My belief is that powerful symbols can change the world, as symbols often contain deep mystical elements, which affect the viewer in myriad ways, and create a bond between like minds. It is this bond to ideas that I seek, the idea that animals are souls and are teachers, that nature is home, and sacredness is our inheritance. Many of my images are guardians of the animals and nature. They are symbols of the future we wish to see. Christina, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Caroline.
I fell in love with your work as soon as I found it online. I discovered you online, and I saw your beautiful piece with the otter. That's a sea otter?
It is. It's Queen of the Sea and the Otter Saint standing on a sea urchin. So that's the whole title.
Wow. That's a prickly place to stand.
Yeah, well, that's what they eat. And so he's in heaven. And of course, it's a very large sea urchin. And the idea behind that piece is that the Queen of the Sea is modeled after Queen Elizabeth. And she was certainly queen of her sea. And so I made her queen of the sea with the otter saint. And, she's the protectress of these creatures. I used to do shows. I'm an art festival artist, and I used to do shows out on the coast and would see these beautiful creatures and the sea lions playing in the ocean. And so I just fell in love with them. So that's where that one came from.
I love that. So tell me how your career evolved from the concept that you paint to where it is now, and if you've always painted this particular series or if you plan to keep doing this for a long time. How did you get to where you are now, and what's your business model? Are you selling online? Are you selling still in shows? Are you with galleries? What does the world look like for you?
Yeah. So first question would be, how did I get here? And like years ago, I was abstract artist, different art, just experimented with all kinds of things. I was in theater and I was a costume designer. I was an actress. I did a lot of different art. And so in 1989, I was in a hiking accident out here in Santa Fe. And the sheriff's posse had to come rescue us. It was me and my friend and her baby. And it was December 12th, which is Guadalupe's feast day. And having been raised Catholic, the sheriff's posse said, "You are lucky because this is Guadalupe's feast day and she protected you." So I started doing Catholic icons of Guadalupe and sold them at the trading post out in Chimayo, which is a very holy site, one of the holiest sites in the country. So it was mostly kind of modern Catholic icons. And then I always put nature in my icons because I feel like I was always left out of imagery. And as you know, as the obvious torturing of this planet has continued and the torturing of the animals, I've added more and more of them to nudge people into rethinking what animals are, that they're not less than us, that they are souls. For example, my black bear seraphim, like seraphim are the highest order of angels in many ancient religions. So they're the overlords of heaven. So instead of making it another image of ourselves as the overlord, I made it as a bear. And to say, look, these creatures that we run across can be angelic beings that are our protectors and our helpmates. How can we think so little of them and where they live and their children and their lifestyle? Basically, they love the planet just like we do. So that's my main agenda with my artwork, is to cajole people into loving these creatures in a way that we love ourselves, that we're not separate from them. Nature and animals and human beings, we share this planet in an equal way. So on that level, that's my artistic trip going on. But as far as a business model, I haven't really done galleries because I don't paint fast. And I make a lot of my money through these very time-consuming prints that I offer, generally online or in the art festivals that I've done. And even social media, I'm kind of giving that up. Facebook seems like it's the evil empire, along with a lot of other things. And I'm just do shows here in Santa Fe. And I've even given up wholesale because it's just so much work and not enough money. And so basically I do the shows here in Santa Fe and online, and my Etsy site has been really good. And I also have my own site, which I'm redoing, and it'll be more of an environmental statement about animals than my Etsy site, which is more kind of pluralistic. So I'll have a bigger agenda on my own site whenever I get to that, because you probably know, Caroline, that doing anything on the computer is just robs you of your life, and you have to work endlessly to keep it going. So I try to keep the hassles at a minimum so that I can really feel good about my artwork and feel good about what I'm doing and the path I'm on.
So for artists who are out there and who want to launch themselves or are working another job and they want to get full-time into their work, how did you go full-time into art that in a way that it supported you? Because you have a little bit different model than, say, somebody that I interviewed the other day who's really predominantly with galleries.
Yeah, galleries are great, but my work is not something that, they're going to talk about. And it needs to be talked about. No.
You don't think so? Oh, you mean that they don't convey your message when they sell the piece?
Yeah, that's right. They're not interested in that. And galleries, I love galleries. There are beautiful galleries here in Santa Fe and beautiful artists and all that. But I just know where my work fits, and it doesn't fit in a gallery. It fits with me because I can tell people about it, and that's how I want it. So as far as getting started in art, a lot of people I have seen through the years, I tell them there's two things you need to do. And that is, one, do not spend any money. And two, make a space for yourself in your own home or wherever you live.
Amen.
And do not spend any money on anything, but take what you have to a small market, even if it's a crummy little market. In your city, there's lots of schools and churches on that lower end of art festivals. And just see what people think, and don't be upset if nobody likes your work because you might be in the wrong spot. Try another spot, because work is accepted in different ways, even in different parts of a city. So just test your work out and get some hints, and then, add a table, add a tablecloth, just gently go about structuring your business in a better way. And then start spending money when you start selling work, but don't spend money until you sold some work. And yeah, I think that's what I would say to just about anybody.
So you went right into the art fairs market right after school and did that full time?
No, no, no. I did galleries, but I had different work then. It was more abstract and expressionistic.
Did that support you right away? Did you have to transition from a day job? Like, what did that look like getting into, how did you get from point A to point B then?
Well, I think you really have to have some faith in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're clever, you can find places to sell your work. So I was just clever, and I found places I could make a little bit here. Like I did flea markets. The flea market here in Santa Fe used to be like awesome. You could make a fortune out there. It's no longer here. So it was just a matter of a little bit here, a little bit there. And then I applied to my first show, and I was really excited and all that. And I had my daughter and her husband stay with me because it was so frightening. And I think people are frightened to show their work.
Yeah.
Generally for the first time in a big way. And they came and I made some money. And so I was thrilled. So I just pursued making money and going with what people wanted, really, which was always to buy really beautiful pieces of work, originals, or a really inexpensive, beautiful print, one or the other. So, yeah, it was just little by little over the years. And like art festivals have it's a huge business in this country. And I've done the biggest ones, Cherry Creek and up in Seattle in the museum show, the Bellevue Museum, and the shows on the coasts, and even in Washington, D.C. I used to go all around, but I don't do that anymore. But you can make a fortune in art festivals, but there is a drawback to them. The drawback to art festivals is that if you travel, you're going to eat up every penny you make traveling. And that can happen even if your work is successful in one show. It can be rained out the next, and you can be up a creek. I've known a lot of people who lost their homes, had to get jobs because they overextended on their credit cards. So don't use credit cards. But lately, I've been thinking art festivals have, in a way, offered, on one hand, artists really great opportunities. On the other hand, art festivals don't really promote provocative art. And so like this time when we have this environmental crisis and so many other ills on this planet going on, there's no real art movement. There's no real political art movement in this country. And I think it's because the artists have been making so much money at the art festivals, they don't want to get into that arena because they won't make any money. They won't get in the shows because the shows like flowers and landscapes and abstracts.
Yeah. Politics is definitely polarizing.
So it doesn't happen in the art shows. So all these political artists that could be helping out symbolically are busy making money in art festivals.
I wonder if you can angle your work towards fundraising at some point, part of what you do for supporting different policymakers that support the environmental agenda, where you would maybe have auctions of some of your work and be able to apply it in that way so that it's not part of your business model, but you're still utilizing your message to make change.
Oh yeah, no, I totally like that. And I give a lot of my artwork, I send it off to animal rights causes or shelters for animals.
Yeah.
That's my main charity I do. And I used to send out prints to various organizations like the NRDC. I sent Bobby Kennedy lots of my prints because he's a Catholic. So I thought he'd enjoy that Catholic spin, but I never heard from him. But that's kind of what you were saying, and I have offered to. Okay, here's the disconnect. People do not see art as an embodiment of political causes or environmental causes at all. And that is a real big, huge problem. We have no symbols that drive us forward. And that's one of the things I'm doing with my work. On my card, it says symbols for the future we would like to see. It's like symbols drive us forward. And so even these huge organizations, they don't really connect how art can be so dynamic and drive their cause further. And I suppose, I kind of harass them to do something, but I don't know if I have the energy. It's a lot of energy to be an artist as it is and to come up with new things. So I admire you, my dear Caroline, doing this blog. It's a lot of time and an effort to do anything well. So
thank you. It is actually, and it's a labor of love. It's time consuming, as you said. So, there's a trade-off there, especially if you want to do a high quality podcast. It takes time to do the production. Luckily, I know how to do both ends of it, so I don't have to farm it out. But that is a double-edged sword, of course, because it takes more of my own time. But I love it. So that's good. I got addicted to it a few years back, and I really enjoy it. So how did you come to select acrylics as your medium of choice? Some artists I speak to, they say, well, I chose acrylics because I like to paint fast and I'm not patient. But it sounds to me like you're a pretty patient painter.
Oh, yeah. I've been working on this new piece like weeks because, I just let a piece talk to me. So it takes a while. Because paintings don't give up their secrets, unexpectedly. So you have to wait until the secrets start pouring out of them. Anyway, acrylics are so dynamic. And I was a oil painter at first. And the reason I switched is I had a basement studio and I didn't have enough fresh air down there. And so even though changing to orange turpentines and that sort of thing, the oils were just too toxic down there in the basement. So I went to acrylics and I had to teach myself them. And they are really hard. I mean, compared to oils, acrylics are mind-bending because they're not as subtle and they're not as easy to use as an oil. Oils are fabulously easy in comparison. But acrylics, I use golden a lot. And I mean, their colors are so, I like really primary colors and secondary colors. And they have such dense gorgeousness that I use them almost exclusively. So that's how I came to do acrylics, just because of the toxicity of the oils.
I hear you. And I actually had a similar experience in the toxicity realm in that I've always had eczema on my hands. So I've had a battle with my hands to keep them from really drying out. And so I've worn gloves for years when I paint. But I suddenly developed a whole range of allergies a few years ago. I mean, dozens. Like I started having a rash on my hand that was not the usual dryness, and I went to check it out and had to have several patch tests and a skin prick test. And they determined that suddenly I was becoming allergic to a whole host of things. And my dermatologist told me that, my system was in overdrive. So I did stop painting for a while, took a break, but I went back to it recently, in the last couple of years. And just recently moved my studio to an indoor room within my house. So I was concerned about the fumes. And so what I did was I purchased a high-end air purifier that is in the room with me. It's a bedroom. It's like, 10 by 12 room. I believe it's a Winix. I'll have to put the link in my show notes for this episode. But I called the company and I spoke to them and I said, I'm going to be using turpentine in an enclosed room. And I described what I was doing. And it's a carbon filter air purifier, and I'm really happy with it. I still keep the terp covered while I'm painting, but for me, it's a texture issue. I've tried a number of things. I tried the green I forget what it's called. It's a green solution. It's supposed to be non-toxic solvent. I did not like the way that there was a lot of drag on the brush. Most recently, I painted for about 6 months with artist grade walnut oil, and that was probably my favorite of the different things, but it wasn't turpentine. I couldn't get those really thin washes. So that's when I got the air purifier. And so far, I'm okay. I'm watching it. It has a light indicator, so it turns itself off when the air is completely done. If you're in there painting on any level, I can hear it, but it's a very quiet machine. And the light bar will turn red if you suddenly uncap the turpentine and you leave it off for a while and it's really running. But then it'll go to orange, and then it'll go to yellow, and then it'll turn blue, and then it'll shut off. So I do keep the lid on while I'm painting for the most part. But it's an option anyway. It depends on how sensitive, though, the artist is. And I completely acknowledge that, having been there. And I have to remind my listeners, do not touch your oil paints with your fingers. I know you're not going to be eating them. But even if your fingers don't have cuts on them, please do not smudge around your paints with your fingers. I just watched a course. I'm always watching courses, on how to paint because I enjoy them, see what other people are doing. And this one artist was smudging her paintings with her finger, and it was oils, and I almost had a heart attack. I'm yelling at the screen, like, what are you doing? You don't touch your oil paints. That's not how any of this works.
Oh, my goodness.
So if you feel like you're going to be in danger of touching your solvents or paints, it's not kryptonite, but wear gloves.
Yeah.
If you're going to be touching your face at all, of course. But I always wear gloves because I know that I have a lot of allergies, and I have to be very careful.
Wow. I'm glad I changed, actually. It took me years to figure out how to use them, but I'm glad I changed.
They're tricky. And I have a long history with acrylics in muraling through airbrushing. So I've got a rig of, 10 airbrushes. And I'm very familiar with painting murals in acrylics for years and years. But at the moment, when I paint my fine art works that are not commercial hires, I'm in oils. And again, a lot of it is texture. But that's good. I applaud you for finding a solution that works because you're very prolific.
Well, you can do a lot of paintings over several decades.
Well, and how often do you paint? Do you paint every day?
No, heck no. I mean, there's too much to do in life. I have to set aside time to paint because it takes a lot of focus. I mean, you can't just go. Well, not with the kind of painting I do now. I used to be much more fluid and listen to jazz a lot when I was painting. And that's when I used oils and all those wonderful washes. And you could really have fun doing that kind of thing. But how I do now, I have to set aside time so I'm not interrupted because otherwise the focus leaves. And I'm really deep into painting as it's like being a priest or a priestess, if you wish, because what you're using are all the dynamics of the creation itself, like color, line, form, and rhythm or pattern are the foundation of everything in the universe. And so as artists, using those elements, we become creators and magicians, literally magicians, in bringing to life something that was not there before. And this calling as a priest, as it were, to the human race, which is what I think artists are, in between God and humanity, or in between universal consciousness and humanity. That's where artists actually reside. And these elements of like color is a language. And like if you put two colors together, they will scream if they're not right. And it'll say, oh, we want this color next to us. We don't want that color next to us. And so it's this intimate language that you're dealing with along with line, like if you have a line that is kind of boring, it'll tell you, look, this is really I've got one now on this painting I'm doing. It's a boring line that actually pulls your attention away from the other dynamic elements in the piece. So that boredom that line is created is telling you to change it and to do something that will make this painting magical. And if you don't have the focus or the time to listen to that, which is what I listen to, then I can't paint. Everything turns out really funky. And I like things that turn out where my favorite reaction is when people are walking by really fast in an art festival, because we have them here in Santa Fe. They're walking by really fast and they'll just be stopped in their tracks by the color or the line or the form or just the overall piece. And they'll just, they'll inhale and they'll look at the piece and they don't have to buy it, obviously. But that is, to me, one of the most wonderful reactions. And you're changing the soul that just happened to walk by. You're changing the dialogue they're having in the day. And I mean, art is such a profound thing. And I don't think there's enough talk about how profound art is and how it can change the world.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's partly why I enjoy podcasts and things like that, such as this one, where we can get into those discussions and really pull them apart and talk about not just the mechanics of the technique, but the philosophy of it, and then the process and people's conceptual ideas behind their work. So do you have a particular palette that you use for painting your portraits then? Since you're working in acrylics, I'd be interested to know, do you have a palette you favor? And does the aspect of the iconography and the reference, I know you put a modern spin on it, so do your colors have any tie to the ancient iconography? I know they were much more muted tones back then.
Hardly at all. Like some of the icons that I revere are really Italian, like Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, those beautiful Madonnas are icons, but people don't really think of them as icons. And some of the original icons, which I may have taken some of their enthusiasm from, are like Ethiopian and Armenian, way, way back at the beginning of Christianity. They are so colorful and they use a lot of greens and yellows and reds like I do. And this is a really interesting thought to me, is some of the first icons were Egyptian because the Egyptians had whole villages of artists. Like King Tut had, within those gold coffins, he had an overlay of his body painted on wood. So when these phenomenal people from 2,000 years ago passed away, this artisan village would be doing their portraits on wood, just like they did for the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun. So they were very colorful. And so the palette, I've been replicating Leonardo da Vinci pieces, and I don't have them up yet on my Etsy site, but he uses a palette that is so rarefied, I can't even find the colors. I can't even match the colors that he uses in the facial tones. They're so rarefied, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about the color he uses. In his Salvator Mundi, that piece that sold for $450 million, it's in the Dubai Louvre, and that's a painting of Jesus holding a crystal ball by Leonardo. And the facial tone, the closest I could come to was in the early morning when the sun first rises in the east. There is a champagne color that illuminates the sky just really quickly. And that is the color, I'm sure, he tried to replicate in the skin of Jesus. And it's incredibly subtle, and I'm far from mastering it at all. And I'm sure if I actually went to a course on how to paint Renaissance paintings, I might learn faster, but I'm learning it on my own and picking it apart. So his palette has these browns and yellows and creams all mixed up into these wonderful, airy things. Of course, he was using oils. So I'm trying to get something that's subtle like that, whether it's in a red or a green or a facial tone. And it depends on what I'm painting. It's like this present palette that I'm using is all primary reds and blues and yellows with some green and orange as secondary colors. And then using this transparent oxide, which is what a lot of Renaissance painters used to cover their canvases. that really comes through the canvas in such a wonderful way that it informs all those colors and makes them a little rusty looking. So that's one thing I've learned. But basically, generally, like I said, I just like the primary colors and the secondary colors. Rarely purple, usually green and orange. And then black and white are significant in that black is often identified as negative space, which I've found if there's negative space in a painting, people fill it in their minds. So like if you're looking at a round piece you mentioned, Queen of the Sea and the Otter Saint, she's surrounded by black. And yet you don't come away with a sense that it's black. You've filled it in with seashells, sky, whatever. And so it's a really phenomenal invention in a painting, and I use it a lot, black. And then white kind of stops you. To me, white just stops things. It's like, oh, look at this. And black takes you away. It takes you to the netherworlds of mysticism and dreaming.
That's interesting. So do you use live models for your human subjects or photographic reference when you compose your paintings?
I don't have any live models. Sometimes I photograph animals or people or places or something I want, or hands. I use a lot of photographs of hands.
And then what about the references, like combining different references of the animals into your compositions? How do you go about that?
Yeah, animals, what are you going to do? You can't, like an otter?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just take one of my pieces, St. Kateri de Goethe. She's a Mohawk Algonquin native person that was made a Catholic saint. And she's in charge of the environment. And what I did with her is I looked up old photographs of Mohawk and Algonquin women, and I took different elements like the eyes of one, the nose of another, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you got to reference that stuff. I was just curious if you have any particular method of composing the elements all together. Do you keep a sketchbook for your concepts?
Sometimes I sketch when I'm at art festivals just to get the ideas down, but generally I have a vision of it. If I don't have a vision, I don't paint it.
Yeah.
So I see it all complete, pretty much.
That's so interesting. I do the same thing.
And so a sketch, I'll sometimes, like this current piece, I sketch it to the side or to the front or something like that and see which one works the best in the overall form.
Yeah.
So that's all I sketch is that way.
Now, what about the frames? I see that you have these intricate medieval, the style of the medieval era frames around some of your pieces. Do you make those frames? It looks like those are custom made by you, maybe. For the one that I'm thinking of was different sizes. It looked like reproductions of the same piece of work, that maybe you would make a custom frame that would embody the style of medieval iconography around that piece. Do you do that?
So my prints are on this really decorative laser cut pieces that I think is what you're referencing. And I like to have it modern, like it's kind of leafy looking and geometric looking, but it also looks like, icons from 500 years ago. And it's really interesting going back to the Egyptian thing. So like an icon is kind of like, it has a vault, a rounded top and square at the bottom, that sort of thing. And that's actually the shape of a tombstone, if you think about it. So icons are generally images of the dead that people have put on their wall. And I think about that when I'm thinking about the animals too. They reflect the iconic world, which is heralding a celebration of the life that has come before. And my hope is that they will live a lot longer than just now.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So when you talk about the die cuts, what looks like a frame then on the ones I saw, I believe was that probably on your Etsy account, were those the different cutouts that you just had printed onto? And then do you paint that surrounding shape onto the reproduction, or do you make, because it looked like the same painting in the center that was different sizes. I'm trying to put it together in my mind of what your process is for reproductions. Yeah, because it was really interesting.
So I design the format that they're on, which is wood, and then the gold piece is masonite. So I design all that, and I have a company cut it out for me. So they're my own designs. And then I paint those pieces separately, and then I put the print on by hand, and then I detail it, and then I put a protective finish on it. So they're like totally finished little pieces of artwork, but they're prints of my artwork. I just can't let go of the whole iconographic imagery. I'm stuck on it. And I mean, I could just make prints of my work and sell that, but I want to do these really elaborate decorative things for some reason. And so I had to give up wholesale because these take too much time to do for half price. So gave that up.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're making reproductions, but then it's a different animal entirely because you're making these custom frames.
That's right. Yeah, they're totally all hand done of my own design. So
you can't discount them too much because you're laying out the money then to have either to do it yourself time-wise or to have somebody cut them out for you.
Oh, yeah. And it's very expensive. It's a very expensive process.
Okay. And then you paint on the actual frames themselves, it looks like.
Right. I put my print on these painted frames, and then I detail around them. And people can't really tell that they're prints, and I'm sure to tell them that they are prints.
Right.
But I like things to be beautiful and original and something you've never seen before. I'm just kind of stuck in that. I want to offer that.
Well, and I'm looking at your pricing too. I mean, how big are these pieces? Because it looks like, unless they're 2 by 3 inches, I think you might want to raise your prices.
I think so too, because they're
beautiful.
They're time consuming and expensive. No, the small ones are like 4 by 6 or 7, something like that, and then the large ones are like 7 by 12. So I think they're still really reasonably priced. And the whole idea of art is pretty interesting, how you price things these days. And I'm guessing that's a good question.
Yeah, that's probably my next question is how do you price your work?
So we had a major recession in 2008, and the economy on top has really recovered, but not necessarily everyone else. So I consider a lot of my prices recession pricing. But some of my paintings, see, there are people who have money and they'll buy your expensive pieces. And sometimes they won't buy your expensive pieces if they're too cheap. Like I had this one painting everyone wanted like crazy. So what did I do? I left it at that cheap price for a couple of months, and then I got so upset with people because they wanted it and they wouldn't buy it at the cheap price. I doubled the price and then I sold it right away. So that was the real problem. It was too cheap.
So that was the original then?
It was an original, yeah. And so the little pieces, my philosophy is I want people to have these beautiful pieces that I make, but I want their money. And because that's how I make my living.
No, say it. That's right. That's how we paint. We have to have a profit motive involved, meaning that our motive is to make enough money to survive and hopefully thrive doing what we do, which is being artists.
Yeah, that's right. So I price these so people who are not thinking about buying an icon at all or a piece of art at all, they just reach in their purse and whip out their credit card or their cash and buy it because it's the right price. It's not a big, huge expenditure. And so there's a lot of that on the spur of the moment, people wanting something a little different to take home from Santa Fe. And so I get those shoppers.
On Etsy, for example, you have to pay to ship these then?
Yeah.
Is that expensive?
It is. Shipping's really expensive.
And is it separate from your price? Do they add that on top, I'm hoping?
No, I just include it in
Like if there's a $30 piece, then they pay 30, they don't pay 30 plus shipping?
No. So in person, those are $28. So I'm splitting the cost of shipping that small piece with the person. So I add a couple of bucks to the prices online because that's just the way it is. I mean, Amazon is getting all the cheap shipping and everybody else's prices are going up because of that.
And can you sell your pieces on Amazon? Does it work like that? Does Amazon allow that? I know Etsy's for art. I haven't actually looked at Amazon for selling.
Amazon, I wouldn't sell anything on Amazon. I'm just not going to do it. And they do have a handmade section, but Jeff Bezos has enough money. He doesn't need my money.
And there you go. You mentioned the reproductions and how they're expensive. How do you get the reproductions then? Do you order them out? Do you take your own photos? It sounds like you have somebody else printing them.
No, I print them. They're laser prints, which I really like.
Okay.
And laser prints are different from inkjet prints. A lot of people know that, but the basic difference that I like the best is that laser prints use a toner, which is a really fine powder, and it's baked. It's literally heated onto the paper. So it has a almost enamel feel, and it's very color fast. And the glossier the paper you use, the richer the color will come with a laser print. And they're really a jewel tone. I have a piece that I have hung outside. It's going on 2 years now, and the color has not changed one bit. And
outside?
Outside. And it's not in the sun. It's under a porch, but it's not in the sun. But it's 2 years, it hasn't faded one bit. So I just love the laser prints. So I just print them up myself. Most of my artwork, I used to have photographers take photos of it, but that can be really pricey. So I just do my own. I got a good camera and I take my own photographs. And it's a no-brainer these days. They're all automatic cameras. And it's just worth it. I mean, you can spend $250 on a camera that can take beautiful photos for years, or you can spend $250 on one photographer doing one painting. And I do giclées. I have giclées that I offer not online, but at the shows. And those giclées, I send the photographs I've taken to this person in California, Sacramento Giclée. I'll just say their name because they're really a good company. And they do really great printing and good prices. And so I just send them my photographs, which have not cost me a cent. Again, back to that thing of do not spend money on art if you don't have to. And then he sends me back giclées, which are archival prints on canvas that are really beautiful. And the prints I use on the Etsy ones are all laser prints from FedEx. You really can't get better color, really.
So you basically take them to FedEx and print them there then, and you get really light, fast reproductions.
I do, and they last, like I said, this one for 2 years outside.
Oh, that's great. So you didn't have to invest in a printer.
No, but I really want one. I really want a printer. I was just thinking today, I really want a printer that can print prints on canvas at home, because it is a headache running around trying to get prints made for people. So it'd be fun to have a really great printer at home.
Well, and I think there are certain websites that will print on demand, right? You can have people order them as they want and order them online. I don't know if Custom Ink does that, maybe. I'm not sure if they do art prints.
I don't know.
That'd be an option anyway.
Yeah, there's quite a few sites that if you have your artwork up there, somebody likes it and they can just get it printed in whatever size, and the company takes care of it. But the downside to that is you get nothing. You get $2, $5. Like, it's a lot of work to put all those images up there in the first place. And I guess it's all where you put your energy.
Yep, I agree. You have to make choices, and different revenue streams are going to have different methods and different pros and cons with regard to expense.
Yeah, so I think of myself as a successful artist, but I'm not successful in a huge way. It's more in a way of just I've been an artist supporting myself for a long time. But, I'm sure you've talked to artists that in galleries, they make, 100, 300, half a million a year. I'm more like in the 50,000 to 100,000 a year range.
You know what, though? That's success to me. If you're able to generate enough revenue that this is your full-time job and you don't have to work a separate day job and you have the time to paint and do your art, whatever the art is, I'm not talking just to painters here, you're a success.
Well, that's what I think. But I'm not one of those successes, like you're going to, like some of the gallery artists here in Santa Fe, they make so much money, 500,000, 1 million or more a year. But I'm just not that kind of artist. And I guess that's one thing you have to find out is where do you fit in this huge art world? I mean, you can go bang on doors all your life and get nowhere, or you can just do something you really love and, have a good time.
Well, and that's the other part of it is not all of them. Some of the super successful artists that are making a lot of money are doing it on their own terms with the art that they really wish to create. But some of those people have done it at the trade-off of either catering to a specific market or generating art in a volume or a schedule that they feel is not their own, and they feel like they've really made a trade-off and not sold out, but it has become somewhat of the 9 to 5, the job, as opposed to the calling that we're talking about. So it really depends. And if you're able to create the art on your terms, which I think is the difference, and in the freedom of your own set schedule that you've chosen, again, to me, that's worth all the tea in China.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly gotten me through life. That's for sure. And I tell people I'm unemployable at this point.
I'm still juggling. And this show's for jugglers too. I'm still juggling full-time corporate and painting and, of course, podcasting. But so, Christina, I like to give my guests the last word to elaborate on anything we've discussed or talk about something we haven't yet covered. Please take a moment to do that and give our listeners some parting career advice.
Well, I guess that the parting career advice that I think is most essential is reframing what you see as being an artist. Are you just like a hack? Or do you want to be the priest or the priestess to humanity? Do you want to lend a helping hand as an artist to this world that is in dire need of your help? So I guess that's what I would say is have an agenda. Don't be dull.
So in your view, anybody who doesn't have an agenda and is painting, say, just the world around them is a hack?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, not at all. Because it doesn't have to be an obvious thing, not like, like some of my favorite pieces are beautiful landscapes. And the agenda there is nature, obviously. And so you don't have to have anything political to say, but you can offer something that is real and true. And as a hack, that's like a hack is somebody who, to me, who finds out that if you paint Frida Kahlo on velvet, you can sell a lot.
Can you? I'll have to interview that person.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I mean, it's just doing something that really isn't you, but you do it really well, and you don't really care who buys it or why, and you're just making your money. And that's a hack to me.
Yeah, take the soul out of it.
Because artists, to me, no matter what kind of art they're doing, are just the most fabulous people. But I think you need that connection to something that is bigger than yourself to be an artist.
This wraps up my interview with modern iconographic painter, Christina Miller. Join me next time for an interview with artist, writer, and arts advocate, Vicky Crone Amoros. And if you enjoy this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. It helps others to find the show too. Until next time, go make something.